Welcome to Careers Unwrapped, where we delve into real-life career stories from successful people who've been through it all, the ups and the downs. We'll get their raw, honest, actionable advice and be the careers talk they wish they'd had when they started out. As someone who has had a varied career, from soldier to salesman, expedition leader to entrepreneur, he knows firsthand that your career doesn't always lead you where you expect it to. Here's your host, Mark Fawcett.
Hello and welcome to Careers Unwrapped. I'm your host, Mark Fawcett, and with me today is Staff Sergeant Dan Moughton. In his army career, he's been a vehicle engineer, he's been a physical training instructor, and also a medic on operational tours. But Dan is also a motorsport enthusiast who runs a YouTube channel called Beyond the Pedal. And since 2021, he's worked on the Army Sports Racing's PR team. He's going to be talking to us hopefully about his career highs, his lows, and also how to forge a career out of your passion. So, Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I think, Dan, let's just start off with what was life for you before you joined the Army?
Yeah, so life growing up, come from Leicester, primary school, didn't go to college or university, did my GCSEs and decided, the Army is where I'm going to go. I think fifth or fourth generation forces within my line of family. So it's that natural progression. So it just made sense to fall into it. It felt natural. It was just almost like not a calling, if you will, but, when you're 15, 16, it was that time of, heroic. It was the family, the pride to be, part of a family that's, from a military background. And that's all I can say. It just felt right. I was a pot wash and a waiter, at 16, the classic first time job that we all have.
So you came from a whole environment where being military was normalized. It's interesting because I did my Army service many, many years ago, and I was the first from my family and the only one, and surprised myself and everybody else with the choice. So I found it culturally just so different from what I was expecting. And when you joined, what did that first piece feel like going into basic training?
I don't think anything was outside of what I'd already expected. So like you say, Dad was Navy and then fireman. Granddad was at a PTI in the Royal Navy. My other granddad was in the REME. And then my great grandpa was at an RAF, Lancaster bomber rear gunner. So, I always had that sort of like discipline and sort of lifestyle, the training that me and my dad did before we went into the Army. There was nothing that I was like, oh, this is a shock. So there was no that, shock of capture when I first joined up. I knew what I was going to be expecting. It's going to be early mornings, late nights, getting shouted out, having to tidy your clothes up. Nothing was ever going to be right. So, all that was already like I say, 4 generations worth of going, this is probably what's going to happen. And it did. So it wasn't really a surprise, but those who didn't have that background, you could tell there was that bit of shock of capture. And a lot of guys do leave because they're just not used to it. So I think really, I'm a sort of like family line and the preparation that was given us before I joined to kind of thank for that, really.
And do you have any particular memories of those early instructors and how they treated you all?
So they were, in all fairness, all the instructors that we had they were really good because we were, 17, a lot of us either 16 or 17 at the Army Foundation College. So, we were under 18. So I think there was a little bit different, but there was still, that's good. I think one of the most profound memories I had was this bombardier, it's Royal Artillery Corporal equivalent. And I remember he came and did a room inspection, and remember he got this pay stick out and basically went to the top of my locker and just pushed his stick to the back of it and just pulled everything out all over my bed. And we're just like, oh, dust at the back there, re-show. And you're just like, your bed's a mess. Even though there's stuff all over it, your bed's a mess. We're like, well, yeah, of course, but you can't say, stand there to attention. Yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, corporal, no, corporal. Yes, bombardier, no, bombardier. But it's those moments that, when the instructor's gone, it's a game, and we'll go on to that later on, how you can play the game of the Army, if you will. But it's when the instructor leaves and you're all just like, you just laugh together about it all because it's part of it all. You all get, mucking together, tidy all your stuff up, redo it all, ready for the next inspection, and the cycle goes on. So, you're all in it together, and that's the beauty of the military, especially in basic training where you're all coming together because you're all in the same boat, you're all suffering together. And that really brings that sort of that brotherhood, that camaraderie together with the Army.
And people who are outside the military and maybe even thinking about a career in it at this point, would listen to you there and go, but why? Why do they just tip all your clothes all over the floor? Because they would understand why you go and you get fit and you do assault courses and you learn how to use weapons, but why do they throw your clothes on the floor?
So really good question. Why do it? So I think there's a few points that is, first of all, there's a really great saying that we have in the military is no, and you probably would have heard it maybe in businesses, no plan survives first contact. So in your mind, you've laid everything out right. You've done everything that you're supposed to do. Then that variable of the unknown comes in, bam, and it changes everything. So, someone comes in and just trashes all your stuff. Well, now what are you going to do? How do you react to that inconvenience? Where does your mind then go when someone's taken what you just to spend hours and hours and hours on and just trashed it all and then walked out? Thought you got to do it all again. How do you build that mindset of going, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? Isn't it a game? Am I now going down a spiral of going, I can't do this. I don't want to be here. Or, right, this is a challenge. I now need to go back and go, right, what did I go wrong? Let's do it. Lads, let's come together. Lads, let's come together. Why are we doing this? What's going on? Okay, we need to do this. We need to do this. Because then we adapt to the new situation. So that's what it's about. That's the why. It's not about messing you around or just trashing stuff for the sake of trashing. It's how do you deal with that? It's like business. You could have the best business strategy, the best marketing, and then something comes along and just completely destroys it. Only people give up, and then finally go, actually, let's regroup, rebuild, and move forward. And that's really what it's all about.
It almost brings back, for me, flashbacks of early Sandhurst training that I thought I'd forgotten about, but it sounds so familiar. So after you completed basic training, you were then you went into the REME, yeah? And so I think you probably better explain, what is the REME?
Yeah, so the REME is the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. These are the guys that are, fixing the vehicles. So you've got loads of different branches, but mainly everyone knows is vehicle mechanics. You've also got, within the REME, you've got your air core trades. So fixing, aviation technicians. You've got your recovery mechanics. But for me, I was a vehicle mechanic. So, which was then split into BMech and AMech at the time. So AMech was track vehicles. BMech was wheeled vehicles. For me, I'm 17, I'm 18. I love cars. I love Land Rovers. I still love Land Rovers now. That's what I want to do. I want to go fix cars. I want to fix Land Rovers. I want to fix trucks. That's what I wanted to do. And so you go into a place called Senior Boarding down in, oh goodness, now we're asking. Yeah, down in Borden, where you do almost 9 months, 6 to 9 months of training, where you basically go from zero to knowing absolutely nothing. And you're on 5 days a week, no breaks, doing all your driving licenses, learning all about engines, vehicles, exhaust system, bodywork, wheels, just how the mechanics of a vehicle works. And then you go on to actually do your driving licenses, because if you need to fix it, you need to test it. You can't test it if you haven't got a license to test that vehicle, which is the get around. And then from there, you then release into the world and you go, right, or Class 3 BM, go fix the Army's vehicles.
Did you and your other new entrants at that point in time, did you all have to know something about engineering and vehicles beforehand, or you just were trained from scratch to fix anything with a wheel on it?
So because I was going into a technical trade within the Army Foundation College, so we were there for a year. So in that time, as we were doing a trade job within a cap badge, we would then go do different classes to the rest of our troop. So within our troop, you had say infantry, you had trade schools, guys were really going to RLC and medical. But as they were doing the technical stuff, we would go and do a separate class. So we would end up getting different quals. So we'd do bench work, we'd do level 2 math, level 2 English. So we'd do some other stuff because that's the trade that we were going down. So I suppose really you already had a little bit of knowledge going into the job of going, well, I can do a bit of bench work. I can make bits and pieces. I can do a bit of technical drawing. So yeah, you kind of have a rough idea of what your very basic A-level work type thing of before you go into that route.
But you didn't need to know engineering before you joined the Army overall.
Oh, no. The Army takes you from zero to hero. So you want to go vehicle mechanic. You want to go and be, obviously go and do vehicle work. That's where I came from. Vehicle mechanic wise, they will take you from you not knowing anything all the way up to you being able to fix Land Rovers, trucks, all sorts.
And presumably you weren't always able to do the fixing in the luxury of fully equipped garage. Presumably you sometimes had to fix this in the middle of nowhere. So where were you really challenged to get something up and running again?
Yeah, so Harry Cake for me was one of the probably one of the best times of my Army career, because it's all about, having purpose. So when you're in that time, it's a case of, if we don't get these vehicles fixed, guys aren't getting resupplied, they're not getting ammunition, they're not getting the things they need to get done. So for us, it's a very vital part of the job. About us doing, we're on time pressure here. We need to make sure this is done. Otherwise, this stuff's not going to get to the location it needs to be at, and guys are going to suffer, because if you haven't got that mindset of let's get this done, it has a huge impact. So, and then you'd go out with the guys and across the locations. When you arrive, you're not getting your head down. You're then back fixing the vehicles again, because these vehicles are getting put through all sorts in desert conditions. They're dusting up all the time. So you're out in the middle of the desert with a toolbox. If you drop a spanner and you leave it for a minute, it's going to be really hot when you pick that thing up. And you've got, there isn't a manager there to watch over you. You maybe have a class one perhaps to help you out. So you really got to know your stuff straight away and just be all over it. But, like I say, you're in the desert with no lifting equipment. You've got to make do with what you have, getting under everything, losing spanners in sand, trying to fish it out. It's not like a nice workshop where the floors are all clean and you've got everything you want to hand. Just you and a toolbox and what you know.
And whereabouts in the world were you at this point?
This is Afghanistan.
And I think that one thing that will strike any listener is the speed at which you develop or pick up your language within the military, because the terminology and the expressions and the definition of locations by operation titles, they help everyone internally to know what you're talking about.
Yeah, of course. You know what? We are terrible for that sort of that second language almost, isn't it? That the inside club of the language that people don't quite know what you're talking about.
And it can't always go right fixing vehicles in these locations. So what about things that go wrong? You said people are relying on you to, they need the transport. So what about when things go wrong? What did that feel like? What was the implication or the impact of that on others?
When things go wrong. So the Army have a very good way. We have a very good ability to say, it can't go wrong. It just will not go wrong. Whatever we need to do to get it done, we get it done. This is I suppose the best way we would put it is for those who perhaps work in, I suppose motorsport, probably the best way of doing it is for that aspect. Or someone who's an entrepreneur going into the business world is, most people work a 9 to 5. Clock in at 9, you finish at 5. That's it done. If I work after that 1 minute past 5, I'm getting paid overtime, etc. In the military, the job's not done and it's an operational priority. We don't stop for the clock. We stop until we're here till the job's done. Everyone but that's when everyone comes together to find, how do we together fix this problem? The clock is running out. How do we do it? There is no, well, that's me. I'm done at 5 o'clock. I'll see you later, guys. It doesn't work like that. This is an operational requirement. Every hand to the pump. We need to get this done. And I think that's the difference when, where you say, things do go wrong, but that's when we all come together and we make it happen. That's just, there are very limited times where I've ever been in a situation where it's just gone, no, it's just unworkable. There is always either a workaround, a fix. What it takes is everyone understanding that we're here together to do a job. It's not just a case of there's only one guy, I'll just leave it. And I think that's one of the really fundamental principles that, people coming into the job need to understand is, there is no, well, I'll just work whenever I want to. It's, we're here till the job's done. And that's how it is. And I'm sure you'll be able to testify yourself.
I was listening last week, an old interview with President Barack Obama, and he was being interviewed about what he looked for when he was bringing in people. And obviously he has some pretty important people do pretty important jobs. And he said, the number one thing is I look for people who can get it done, so that whatever problem he might have, whether that's, a huge international issue or whatever problem you were dealing with in terms of ensuring the fighting soldiers who needed vehicle had it, that ability to just get it done is crucial. And undoubtedly, the military really instills that and trains it, makes it part of culture. So after a while, when you're doing that role, when did you get your first promotion?
So I actually got promoted to Lance Corporal after I came back from Hurricane. So my first tour to Afghanistan, I got promoted.
So then you start having to take charge of other people, make decisions on their behalf, look after them as well. How did you find that the first time?
So at that level, when you go to like private land check, let's say it's the hardest one to gain, the easiest one to lose is what they always say. It's one of those where, what I always had is like with the military, for me, I've never been one to like chase the ranks. I'm just kind of that person where, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, getting paid. If I'm put in that position that requires me to step up to the challenge or to the challenge of command, then I'll do it. I don't go out to just seek it like, I want the power, I want this, I want that. So for me, I've always got a notion where, if you ask someone to do something, generally they'll just, people with a bit of kindness, if you go around screaming and shouting and yelling at people all the time, it's classic British mentality. People get the backup. There's a time and a place for it. And I've always been on the notion that if you go in with a little bit of kindness, treat people nice, reward excellent work, help where people are struggling, and always follow those principles. Like I've had some really good NCOs and some leaders in my time, and I've also had some really poor ones. And I've tried to go, I want to be like that person. That if I can emulate a leader, that would be the person I would go to be, or, that because the way they conduct themselves, the way they treat people, the way they get the most out of their guys, because they're not just yelling all the time and just speaking to people, because, that happens, I think in all walks of life. I think it's just human nature. Some people like to have the power and other people not too fussed by it. Lads, can we just please, cool, easy.
I think the leadership piece is really interesting here. And so you mentioned there where there were some leaders above you who you were inspired by and others who you clearly weren't. What do you think the traits that you took out of both the good and bad examples, as in, I'm going to do some of that and I'm definitely not going to do some of that? What did you take away from those sort of people and situations?
I think what it was is put myself in, how was I feeling at the time when that person was speaking to me? And that will replicate. So if I'm speaking to people, there's a time and a place where you need to scream, shout, get things. This is not a negotiation conversation. There are times and places for it. And those are like those operational moments, those times when you're like on the battlefield, on an exercise where, time is precious, go for it. There's a time and a place for it. If you're like it all the time, it just becomes like, I want to avoid that person. I don't want to work for that person. I'll just do, yeah, fine. You just there. I'll just please them. Yeah, fine, one. What you wanted to become is the leaders that I saw that where I wanted to work for them is because I wanted to show up, they would just ask me to do something. It's just a way that was just like, it would polite. It wasn't forceful. It was just, can you just get this done? We're on a bit of a time schedule, but this needs to be done. Then, if I didn't do it, and then I asked them, and they asked me a second or third time, and then they went and said, I've told you this, get it done. Well, hang on. Yeah, of course the tone has to change because I'm not doing as I'm supposed to be doing. So that if you're hard all the time, people don't really pay attention to it. If you then go from nice, then all of a sudden you switch and go, I've asked you this, get it done. People go, oh, okay. If that makes kind of sense.
Absolutely. At Sounders, they had an expression. It was an entire ethos, serve to lead. And you focused on service first as part of the way that you led others. And actually, at my current business, We're Futures, we run a leadership development program for some staff every year and talk to them about context or situational leadership. And as you're describing, there are ways to bring people on board and consult. But equally, if you're suddenly involved in, let's say, a car accident, you want somebody to be making some decisions and getting people to safety and not just saying, what are we all going to do? So I think that aspect of leadership, I've always believed is a lifelong skill that you can improve upon. And the whole thing about natural leaders, yeah, there are some who may be a little fast to it than others, but like kicking a football, playing guitar, learning a language, leadership is a skill you can improve upon if you consciously work at it. And so you were a Lance Corporal then and still an engineer. And at some point you trained as a medic. And what caused that change from your perspective? Why?
Yeah. So I think what it was is, if we're going to go into the sort of like coming off tour, and this is something that's, it's been proven. It's something that, the Army still struggles with sometimes, is when you come back away from operations, you end up having almost sometimes like a little bit of loss of identity because you're going back to going, now we're not doing those things we were doing before. I'm now back in my unit in UK. I'm fixing a vehicle that's going to go 5 miles and not really do anything. You just kind of feel like you lose purpose. So from there, I went and did a phase 1 training job, doing adventure training for recruits, which again, it was 2 years, very rewarding. You're giving young guys experiences. It's very suited to my sort of like style of how I'm with with other soldiers, just having a laugh when having a laugh, having a good time, putting people in challenging environments, watching people grow and learn, and you're coaching them through that. And then, of course, it was my time to come back into the ring, and I just thought, do I really want to go back into that fold of doing that? And I just didn't really want to. So I had a few choices. I could have gone into the Royal Army Physical Training Corps, or I could have gone as a medic. I was a team medic, what we call a team medic in Afghanistan, where I did a few bits and pieces, nothing too wild. And I really enjoyed that. Again, coming from a line of, dad was a fireman, sister's a nurse, that kind of helping, sort of just like to help people. And I just thought, you know what, being a medic would be a good role for me to go into. And it just kind of just fell in that way. So, yeah.
And so when you became a medic, you then went on further operational tours. You able to say where in the world you were?
So, yeah, well, Iraq was when I ended up going to next, is where I ended up working there and did a few bits and pieces out there.
And in terms of bits and pieces, then you're a medic in an operational environment. You're going to deal with the nasty end of the work of the military then. What sort of incidents stick in your mind from your work as a medic in the Middle East?
I think in what casualties dealt with, or best way to go with that would be is the training that you get, the specialist training that we had worked. And it was very good to see that the training that we did had an impact, or to get somebody back to their family. And those initial, because for us, you're working on that sort of stop the bleeding, make sure there's an airway, get them out. And, trauma, I'm not saying it's easy, but it is, once you kind of got over okay, this is what we've got here. Okay, let's look at the two things. Are they bleeding? Yes, stop it. Have they got an airway? Can they breathe? No. Well, let's make them sure they can breathe then. Once you've got those two things out of the way, they can get to the specialist care, because the specialist at the other end don't have to worry about too much about those things, because you kind of covered it so they can work on the other stuff. I think the most important aspect of that is knowing that the training that I had prepared me as best as it could for the real problems.
So were you working very much on the ground where the incidents happen, down with fighting soldiers, or were you hospital based for when they were being evacuated for first stages of care?
Yeah. So I suppose the best way would to say it is, with the line of work that we were doing, we were, what you would call a tactical bound behind. So where we would be what we call like an aid post. So they would bring whatever they had to us. So they'd do a little bit of patchwork or whatever they could do on the ground with their guys at the basic level, then bring them to us, and we would make sure that it was done at a much higher level to then go on to the next stage of care for it to be, pretty much recovered. And, we had feedback of saying, we had a few instances where, we got the feedback saying that the guy that, that was really, really injured, survived because of what we were able to do. And with the very limited resources in the locations that weren't what you would call, NHS clinical, you're working in environments that are, again, like the mechanics sort of, it's, you don't have the luxury of being in a nice, clean, clinical suite. You could be operating in a bombed out building, in an old shut up petrol station because you just got to make do with what you have to create an aid post to get people in, get them the treatment they need, and then move them on.
And you're dealing then with young men, mostly men, but women as well, who are scared at this time if they're conscious, and maybe with some colleagues with them if someone's gone back with them. What was hardest at this sort of role? Was it the emotional side? Was it actually just the medical side of getting the job right? What were the challenges for you in the role?
So I think with the mental side, it's one of those, again, in our line of work, you don't have time to let your emotions get in the way of stuff. If you start thinking about your emotions and how you're feeling about it, that's not going to fix that personal problem. What you need to do is get over the fact that, okay, yeah, what you're seeing isn't great. What about the guy that's going through it? Or what about that guy that's, hang on a minute, I've lost my leg. Get over yourself. And that's the thing, again, is that the training we had beforehand, it's one of those where, not tunnel vision, but I suppose it's, you haven't got time to think about how you're feeling about it. Where it's right, what do I need to get done to get this person the treatment they need to save that person's life? If you start going down this rabbit hole of, worrying about how you're feeling or how am I going to react, don't worry, you'll know how you're going to react when it happens. And 9 times out of 10, the line of work I've seen, done, people that I've worked with, I know it's a bit old fashioned, but you just get on with it. We have this ability in the army to just turn it on when we need to. When it comes to that moment, we just turn it on when we have to. And that is something that just comes with time and experience, knowing that training works, knowing that you've got your oppos around you, your friends, your colleagues, and also knowing that what you're doing, you need to make sure you've got it. It's on, you've drilled it. And next thing you know, it's just bump, done. Next person.
Have you ever felt fear?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I think to say that you don't feel fear, so there's a very fine line between fear and excitement. They're almost the same things, and it depends how you want to look at it. Depends how you react. Fear and excitement, they run a very steady parallel. The adrenaline, how you're feeling, the shaking, first, for example, is jumping out of a plane. So I've jumped out of a plane a couple of times. For those that, know what a skyvan is, it's this rickety little plane where you do military parachuting in. It takes you up and the back door drops down and you're stood there. You're just looking, for those experienced parachuters that will see this will understand the very first time they may have jumped, but obviously the very first time you're about to jump out and you're just going to step into nothing. You're stepping into nothing, but your plane's going up, your heartbeat's racing. It's excitement, it's fear, it's, okay, what am I, okay, I've got everything. I've done the drills. Then you stand up. Then that door just, opens up and you're just looking like, well, this is it. Then all of a sudden, you jump out and it's just, and all of a sudden it all kind of just goes away. You fall into it and you go back into it. But it is that initial, I think Will Smith did a bit of a talk on that a while ago, but it's the same, it is exactly the perfect analogy of so many things in life are just like that, where fear and excitement at the same time. And then when it happens, you just turn it on and then you just roll with it.
Yeah, I think the parachuting is an interesting one because I did a fair bit of that when I was younger, and the fear that I had as the plane was just getting higher and higher, knowing what I was about to do, never ever went away. But equally at the same time, it was also more scary than I'd ever been in an operational environment. And the medical side that you mentioned, what it feels like then, I remember very much. I was on a just second day of an operational tour and a helicopter was hit out of the sky about 50 feet, maybe 100 feet above the ground near us, came down and casualties inside it. And I was one of the first to it. And there was this chap in it whose basically his stomach had been opened up and there was a lot of his insides on his outside. And we sort of patched him up as quick as possible, got him out there. Then we had other things to deal with. Then the next day, other things to deal with. I didn't really think about that again for about 6 or 7 months. And that's when I'd come back from tour. I had a chance to go, that was just quite intense for a very short period of time. And my main fear was of not screwing up. As I didn't want to let people around me down. I didn't want to let my soldiers down. I didn't want to let this guy down in particular. And I think a lot of that is a feeling the army instills in you. And the main thing is, I don't want to screw up for the people. It's pretty much because that's sort of the worst thing you can do.
So, so you well know that, there is just this thing that, like, say, the incident happened and you've just gone, let's turn it on, let's go, let's get it done. And like I say, as you said there, you didn't think about it, you just got it done because of the training, the preparation, all of it. You didn't go and go, oh, what do I do here? It's just, right, we're on now. This is not a game. People are relying on us, and next thing you know, you've done what you need to do for that individual to get the shipment they need.
So bringing us back sort of more to, as we continue to unwrap your career to current time, you're now heavily involved in motorsports. So somebody might think, hang on, this is a soldier who's fixed vehicles around the world, who's been a medic, and now he's doing public relations, YouTube, and motorsports. Surely he's left the army. How does that work?
It feels like it sometimes. It does feel like it sometimes. I've always been a fan of motorsport. Yeah, always been a fan. How it all came about was, I suppose, during the lockdown era. Many of us, we're all sat and watching YouTube and you finish work. Because at the time during COVID, we were still working, as medics, we were still doing, what was required of us to do. I say for a lot of the army, it didn't stop. We were still working, we were still doing bits and pieces. But also, I did find myself watching a lot of YouTube and I just found myself being like, oh, why am I not doing this? Look at all these guys, these crazy cars doing YouTube and stuff. My partner, she just went, well, do something about it then. You do it. And I was like, fine, I will. So from there, I started the YouTube channel Beyond the Pedal, and a buddy of mine who races in the motorcycles, he reached out to me and said, the Army's got the British Army Motorsports Association. There's 8 disciplines. They do Army sports car racing. And I was like, what? And so from there, I reached out to the team and showed them what I was producing. And they were like, okay, yeah, come down. I made a video for them. And ever since last year, I've been part of the team, doing all the PR work, really building relations with the guys, having such a laugh, but also showcasing that the skills that we learn coming together, time pressures, getting things out, getting the cars ready, is all transferable, such a relatable level. And so in order for us to have the successes that we've been having, we have to work together as a team to get it out. And that's what we're trying. That's what I really wanted to showcase with doing the Army Sports Car Racing public relations, is to show that the highs and the lows for everyone within the team. There are more highs, absolutely. We're going racing at the end of the day, of course, but we're trying to publicize that sustainability piece across all 8 disciplines. How we get people involved in motorsports. Granted, it's not for everyone. How we also get women involved in motorsports, and how they can. We've got a young driver at the minute, Yasmin. She's phenomenal driver. Real inspiration both to all of us in the team and to female drivers that want to compete. And it's those sort of things that we're really, really focusing on. It's like how you can push yourself, how the team can get around you and move forward. How goes, the race is starting in half an hour. The car's still in bits. We need to get this thing back together quickly, otherwise we're not going to be able to race and get points and then, beat the Army, beat the RAF and the Navy, which is the key point really. Motorsports is very relatable to, and it goes back to what I was saying about, working hours. We're not done till the car's ready, which is why you see we had an opportunity to go and speak to the Haas team. We got to go into the Haas garage at the British GP. We were chatting to a lot of the mechanics and they were saying a lot of the guys within teams that are ex-forces, because they get the pace of life in an F1 team. They're on the road all the time. They're always away. The hours are ridiculous. And a lot of perhaps the civilian sector within there just aren't used to that way of life. Whereas a lot of the ex-forces are like, oh, we're away again. Yeah, no problems. Oh, we got away late again. Yeah, no problems. Fine. There's just 0 complaints.
Are you racing yourself?
I don't race at the moment. I think that's a future plan. I don't race at the moment. I'm just building it, just trying to get our name, our branding, our sport really into the spotlight, so that people come on, and it is growing rapidly.
And how did the last season go? Did you beat the Navy and the RAF in the key races?
Well, stats don't lie. Stuff like Doug Ingles, he was the AFRC champion, RLC driver. He won last year's one, so we'll take that as a bit of a W for us. And the guys are coming for saying it, but yeah, we're definitely winning the way at the moment. Yes.
And I saw your YouTube piece from the Formula One paddock. I think it was at the British Grand Prix last year. Apart from meeting and going inside the garage with the Haas team, what are the Army getting out of you all being there and doing this?
Yeah, great. That's a really question. Actually, people are like, hang on, why are people going on this? Well, it's motorsport. It's the F1. And for us, F1 it's all glamour. It's all this, it's all that. But, it's also like, how do people brought out the question of want to join the Army and go, hang on, I can race cars in the eye. I can be part of a motorsport team as well, because, most, as you've probably seen with a lot of motorsports, people think there's a lot of money involved, and there is money. Of course, there's a lot of money involved in it. But what the Army does is, which is again fascinating, is anyone can come along and this is across all the sports, and the Army will take you from knowing absolutely nothing about that sport to somebody having pro level training. Take Kat Matthews as a prime example. One of the top pro athletes in the Ironman series for triathlon. I think she came in with very little experience of Ironman, competed a few times, and all of a sudden, found a passion for it. And the Army were like, you've got a real talent here. And the Army identified that talent straight away and was like, you know what? You've still got your full-time job, but we're also going to get you to a real high level of training and represent the Army. It's the same for us. We're now in 3 different, racing series because of the talent that we have within the team. We're considered one of the most professional teams within the paddock, especially within the 750 Motor Club. What's really good is sometimes the directors, we have a bit of a kerfuffle, if you will, on the track. The directors are more than happy to come down to us and, give us a one-way conversation, because they know we'll react to it without any kickback or fuss. And then we progress on and just get better with that. We're in 3 different racing within the Army sports car racing, 3 different series. And again, it's promoting the army, it's promoting motorsports, it's promoting that team bonding. It's promoting fact, I didn't realize you could do that in the army. Oh, you can race it, or you can go into that. And I've always wanted to race this or do that. And the army gives you that opportunity, not just in, like, say, within British Army Motorsports, but in, if you could think of a sport, pretty much the army has a way for you to do it. And that just goes into a bit of a follow-on, really, is, why are people seeing people doing sports? The reality is it's part of the army sort of like give back. As I'm sure you well know, the army's asking you to go, tomorrow, hey, Dan, guess what? You're off for 6 months. Say goodbye to your family, say goodbye to this person, you're on PDT and you're going out the door. And that's the reality. So, but in return, the army goes, we got all these sports event training you can go and do as well. So there's a huge amount of give and take. So the army can go, we want you to do this, but in return, you're also going to get all of this. So, there are highs and lows with both of them.
And you can therefore take a telling off on the racetrack from the race directors in a way that perhaps Tito Wolff and the Red Bull team can't when we see on Drive to Survive.
I mean, to be honest with you, they can be very, very direct. They can just literally just give us that one-way conversation. Guys, it was one of the ones we had, it was last year. And the guy just came down and said, you guys, the military, we expect a higher standard from you. And it's like, you know what? He's absolutely right. We should be doing things a bit better. And it was a bit of on track, kerfuffling, if you will. But at the end of the day, he's absolutely right in what he says. We should be more professional in certain aspects. I mean, we go away, we talk about what happened. Why did this happen? Okay, I did this, I did that. Okay, don't do that. Let's make sure we don't do this. Okay, why did you do this? Blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And we have that sit down, look back. How do we get better? Next race came along. The guy comes down and goes, that's what I want to see. And that's the difference.
You mentioned earlier about playing the game of the army. Said we might come back to that. What did you mean by that?
So playing the army game is one big game. There's a few things I would always say to people, first impressions, polish your boots, right place, right time, right kit. It's a very simple philosophy. Be in the right place, at the right time, in the right kit, and you'll be fine. Someone asks you to do something, go into it. Easy as that. Yes, sir. No, sir. 3 bags full. Absolutely no problems at all. With the army, it can be very, very easy, and it can also be very, very difficult. But if you just follow 3 simple steps, I think it's the same in most things in life. Right place, right time, right kit. You can't go wrong.
And what do you think you'd have done if you hadn't gone into the army?
So I probably would have fallen into something either like fire service or the police, or I'd have become a paramedic maybe. I'd have probably fallen into something along that sort of line, more than likely. Or I'd have maybe taken over a business that he also had as well, potentially. But honestly, at the time, I couldn't see myself doing anything else.
And with everything you've learned, everything you've experienced during your life so far, and there's still a lot to go. So you have an 11-year-old child, so you've got a whole lot of parenting, 11-month child. So you've got a lot of parenting to do. And if you go back and speak to your 16, 70-year-old younger self, what advice might you give to them about things to do or things not to do?
It's a very interesting question, because I've thought about this sort of question quite a lot, about what would you do and go back, and would you give yourself any advice? I think the reality is it wouldn't, because I wouldn't give any advice that would change the course of where I am today, because, it's led me to the position I'm in. So everything I've gone through has got me to this point. I think if you try and stop the mistakes of your past and stuff, I think you have to go through that. You have to go through those mistakes, because the product you end up getting from, as long as you can learn from those mistakes, as long as you can go, or perhaps, no, you know what? There is one piece of advice I would give my younger self, is take accountability for everything straight away. When you're 16, 17 years old, it's everybody else's fault but your own. If there's one thing I would have said to myself, is take accountability for absolutely everything. Perhaps shout at you. Why? It's not something they've done. It's something that you've done. Again, you have to go through those mistakes to realize that. But one piece of advice I would give anybody going into this job or going into any walk of life is accountability. Take accountability for everything that happens, both for you and to you. Celebrate the wins that you've worked hard for, but also learn for why things have gone wrong and where you went wrong. Not anybody else, not what somebody else did, what you did that was wrong. if you can do that from a young age in any walk of life, I think you'll have a lot more success. Absolutely. Own your mistakes and don't sit there and blaming everybody else. I think that's one of the things that I would say to, because I think we've all been guilty of when we were younger. And I certainly was, when I was younger, being like, oh, but it wasn't this, it was that, or my alarm didn't go off, or I was late because of this, or I was late because of that. Set your alarm. Wake up on time. Set more alarms. Take accountability for yourself. That's the advice I would give the 16-year-old Dan Moughton at the time.
Dan, it's been really interesting to unwrap your career, the variety it's given you, and also the thought you've had about what it's done for you as a person, how you've progressed, and what it feels like actually to have a long, good career in the Army. So thank you so much for coming on the show and for talking to us about that. I think anybody who wants to get a bit of insight of what does it actually feel like will have got it from you. One thing we like to ask guests as well is, because we want to keep this baton of careers, experience, and advice moving along. If I was to ask you perhaps one other person who you think we should get on, whose own experience, whose own career journey or story would be really interesting and useful to others, who might that be?
Actually, outside of the military, there's a guy called David Lynch, who I do some work with. He runs the Conclave. He's an entrepreneur. And he came from Northeast, came from, difficult background, didn't go to university, didn't come from much money, and he built a company, Lynch Health, I believe it was, some really great business decisions, and has become an entrepreneur. And his story is really, really fascinating. He's a lovely bloke. We got on really well. I've been doing some work with him as well, but his background is very, very interesting of going from that, coming from working class family in the Northeast, none of the, advantages that, many people perhaps maybe get, and to turn himself into quite a successful businessman, with own stuff going on. He's definitely worth someone to chat to, David Lynch. And I would say, if there's anybody else I would say for you to interview, is probably my boss that I've currently got, a guy called Pete Armstrong. He is a very interesting guy who is a font of military knowledge, a very, very successful career, going from a gunner to a major lieutenant colonel. A very inspiring, one of the most inspiring bosses I've had, and I learn a lot from him every day. I've only been in this current role 8 months, and the conversations we have, we talk geopolitics, we talk all sorts, how the Army works, the upper echelons, at brigade and group levels. Very, very interesting man to talk to.
Great. Two fascinating people. I think overall, what I've taken away from this, and I agree with it so much, is it's the mantra of just get it done. It's something that the military teaches you. It's something that sets you up. And it's also something that employers outside the military should perhaps consider when they're looking for people who they want to get things done. So I think that's a good way to leave us. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great fun.
No, thanks. Well, just one more thing before I do leave it there. The last thing would be is, if you are going to join the Army, one thing is volunteer for everything. Don't know where it's going to take you. Volunteer for, if there's an opportunity, take it.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Mark. Cheers. Thanks a lot.
This podcast is sponsored by We Are Futures. To find out more about We Are Futures and how we can introduce your brand, business, or organisation to the mass markets of tomorrow, visit www.wearefutures.com. Make sure to search for Careers Unwrapped in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Remember to click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at We Are Futures, thanks for listening.